teacher. You know, it's such a shame when we had this opportunity in the 90s that we didn't do it, and now we're faced with having to pay for it. And I think that we are going to have to look at being resourceful here because it's time. But another thing that I'm worried about is the excessive growth that has spread Orange County so far out, east, north, west, and south. You know, how are we going to get people to get on the train, come into downtown? We're not a kind of town that does everything downtown, so it's going to be a very difficult challenge. But we're gonna be paying for this. We are moving forward. This is a done deal. We've got to figure out how we're going to do this. We've got to get, I believe, the private sector is involved, and also surcharges on the tourist people who come here. Again, I do not support raising taxes for the people of Orange County to have to pay for this. I'm sorry. I do not think it's the right decision to make for people who live in Orange County. It's not something that can be in favor or not. The legislature made the decision for us. When the people made their decision, it wasn't accepted, and the legislature moved forward. I would have liked to have seen it when it could have been paid for, but now we're stuck having to pay for it, and we've got to find creative ways outside of our tax dollars.
Thank you. Ms. Prezan, SunRail is going to be a definite asset eventually. They still have a lot of issues to work out. For instance, we don't start paying it until year 8. We need to start working on this now. How are we going to pay for this in year 8? We cannot wait for year 6 or 7 to decide. Something else that I just found out today in a SunRail meeting is they're not even going to operate initially on weekends. And I think sometimes they forget that people still work on weekends. Another issue is, if people take commuter rail from point A to point B, that's great. How do we get them to point C? We have got to come up with feeder routes of how we're going to get them. For instance, I'll use the Sand Lake Road, Orange Avenue intersection, where it's going to end in the first phase. If you take that, if you go from Winter Park to that what do you call it, rally there, which is just going to, they're calling it a kiss and go. It's not a place for you to stop and socialize. It's a place for drop off. They will have some ample parking places, and that's it. If you take the trolley or the rail there, and you want to go to the Florida Mall, or you want to go to a medical office over there, how are you going to get there? You can't walk. There aren't any sidewalks. You can't ride your bicycles for the same reason. We have got to make sure that we make this affordable for people. We've got to make it economical also to run it. And we also need to make sure that it's going to be convenient, because if it's not convenient, it's a waste. People are not going to be taking it. So these are some of the issues that we need to start thinking about now before it's built, and we need to figure out what we're going to do to pay for it. We cannot tax anybody else anymore. We've got to stop putting it all on the taxpayers. So these are some issues that I have with this, but the biggest thing is the feeder bands. And if you see only 1 or 2 people getting off it, then you have to start thinking, okay, is it worth it? Are you going to make these people wait until the next time the trolley comes and see if there's more people that want to go to the Florida Mall? Or are you going to keep the things going? So there's a lot of issues right now. We're also working on noise issues. I serve on the Technical Transportation Services Committee for Metro Plan, so we are very active in this process.
My focus is on job creation and economic development. There's actually 2 areas that anybody in economic development and job creation looks at. One is education, because if we don't have good schools for employees and for owners of businesses to attend and for their families to attend, then they won't make your community home. 2 is if we don't have strong transportation networks and a strong transportation plan for the future, they won't locate and continue to stay in our area to build business. Now with that said, I've always been very supportive of SunRail, especially in concept. I would have liked to have seen a project of this size, especially one that is so long-reaching, go before the voters and not just be something that 6 people, 7 people decided on. I think that there's something to be said about the new Board of County Commissioners is going to have to be the one that finds a way to fund this program. I think there's a lot of different areas that we can look at from a funding perspective, and I would hope that we can get the right people at the table, put politics aside, put competitiveness aside, and have these conversations of what we're going to do, and without raising tax dollars. There's the rental car surcharge. I believe there's an opportunity for some level of a transportation impact fee on future development, especially future development within the Innovation Way corridor. I think there is a possibility of some sort of transportation impact fee for those businesses vying to be around those stops. Again, because those are economic development opportunities, and folks are going to want to be near those bus stops or near those train stops. And finally, I don't think we can just talk about commuter rail by itself. We have to talk about it combined with links. Because again, if we're not willing to make a true investment in time and services and dollars into funding transportation networks, it won't work. At the end of the day, it'll just be a waste of money. And that's what we can't afford to do.
I'll go back to my answer to the first question when I mentioned transportation is a worldwide issue. You've heard all the reasons why we need to have a transportation system second to none. It involves companies relocating here. If you're coming from up north, you're used to having subways, you're used to dropping down, going where you need to go for a reasonable cost. Do they pay their own way? No, they don't. We need to look to see if we can be a little bit creative and figure out a way to fund SunRail. The upside of SunRail is that along the rail there's going to be phenomenal possibilities for construction. I know both hospitals are looking to create what they're going to call medical villages along the rail stops, and they have some prototype plans where you can see the corridor down to the rails up to the hospital. You need the link stop there to run what probably could be a limo type system to move folks downtown, to take young folks to where they want to go, down to the theaters and clubs and so forth, where they like to go and entertain themselves. The rental car surcharge was passed by the legislature, I believe, 3 years ago, and Governor Bush, for some reason, vetoed it. It would have gone to the voters. We would have had those dollars already for links and to fund and build a transportation. Gentleman from Bithlo, there's no bus to Bithlo now. They cannot get to the doctor. The closest doctor to them is probably in Titusville, and that's kind of the sad state of affairs for Orange County. We need to make sure that all of our citizens can get where they need to go. So I am a proponent of SunRail. I think we need to figure out the way to fund it. That's why I go back to saying we need to start the restricted fund now, that we will fund it, and not have somebody else have to bear the problems later on. High-speed rail, yeah, here to Tampa, $2 billion. And that's a lot of buses you could buy for that. And I think going back to when the interstate system was created, there was a national plan for transportation. I don't believe there's a good, solid national plan for high-speed rail. And we need a solid plan for it. I mean, you just can't connect a couple